Super. So first action is to call roll and establish quorum. Please say you're here if you are. Jeb Bowden.
Here.
Todd Kemper.
Here.
Gerald Crump.
Here.
Sonny Giles.
Here.
Tom Kyler.
Here.
Steve Lerner.
Here.
Kendall Miller is here. John Moos.
Here.
And understand that Eric, Kurt, and Jonathan are not scheduled to attend. Are any of them here? Okay, so staff member roll call. If I could ask the Uptown staff to identify themselves, please.
Andrew Jarrett.
Stephen Wood.
Carol McCain.
Betsy Kirkgard.
Shannon Daniels.
Mike Williams.
John Breeding.
Amy Escalante.
Bob Ethington.
Delia Miswa.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public? So hearing none, I want to give you all the usual instructions to please say your name before speaking. Please stay on mute when you're not speaking, and that should help the meeting run well. And I guess there are no comments from the public since we have no members of the public.
Mr. Chairman, our screen shows 4 telephone numbers. If we could get those people to announce themselves.
Okay, so yes, please. The 4 phone numbers that are with us, if you wouldn't mind speaking up so we know who you are.
Good afternoon, Lauren Morales with RBC.
Welcome. And we should have 3 more.
Cornell Emanuel, ABHR.
Glad you're with us. Thanks.
The other 2 need to unmute. Marguerite.
Megan Jumino with ABHR.
Does that leave us with 1 more, please?
Seven 138.
I believe my colleague Leslie Cook is on the line. She may be muted.
Okay.
Okay, super.
All right.
So does anyone want to make any comments from the public at this time? I assume not. The first item after this is to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2020 Board of Directors as previously.
This is Steve, so moved.
Go to the minutes.
Is there a second?
This is Gerald, I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we can raise hands. We can see you. So rather than unmuting, just raise your hand. Review quarterly investment report is our next item. Shannon, could you take us through that, please? It's found on page 3.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, you see the first of 2 pages for our first quarterly report for the period July 2020 through September 30th, 2020. The first page kind of outlines the cash balances in our 3 funds. The general operating fund, we had just over $3.5 million with Capital One Bank. BBVA Compass, we had just over $1 million for a total in operating of $4.5 million. Our capital projects fund had just over $5.3 million with Capital One Bank and some residual funds in our Regions Bank investment account for just over $5.3 million. And lastly, our debt service fund balance had just over $238,000. September is the month where we pay principal and interest on our outstanding debt. The second page of this 2-page report kind of outlines those balances that require collateral as well as any investments. And we were sufficiently collateralized for our deposits. In the middle, we talk about compliance training, which is required every 2 years. The last training was in August of 2020, in which both John Breeding and myself attended. And lastly, that section contains approved broker dealers for our investment transactions. Also, we have the second quarter report, which is from October 1st of 2020 through December 31st of 2020. Again, the first page outlines those balances in the three funds: operating fund with just over 3.3 million between two banks, capital projects fund with just under 5 million, and then lastly, again, our debt service fund. Just to point out some of the activity that you began to see, tax revenue collections in both the operating fund with Capital Bank and our debt service fund with Capital One Bank. The second page, again, is where we talk about collateralizing our deposits, training, and approved broker dealers,
Page 6.
which is on page 6. And that is it for those two quarterly reports. Are there questions or concerns regarding the information?
Thank you. If there's no questions on that item, we can move to the next item, and we'd like to ask you to review the quarterly budget report found on page 7, please.
Okay, great, thank you. On page 7, you see our budget to actual for our operating funds. We've highlighted the first 3 columns are our third quarter actual to date with the budget and the percent of budget. Ideally, we'd be at 100% for the quarter if we forecasted right on target. If you look down to total expenditures, we're at 77% of budget, which is about right because we still have some more to go in March. The last 3 columns looks at the total budget year to date. You can see that FY21 year to date is what we've done up until this point. You can see the total budget for the year and our percentage there. Again, we should be about 70% or so, 70-75% of expenditures, and right at the same for revenue. If you look down to the bottom, total expenditures year to date, 72%. We do expect to be within the budget there. If you have questions about any particular line item, I'd be happy to talk about that. You can see as far as tax collections, we're at 98% of what we budgeted, 5.96 versus 6.03 for tax revenues.
Okay.
That is on page 7. I'm sorry, page 7 is, y'all have page
That's
8.
operating.
There you go.
Page 8.
Are there questions, concerns about the operating budget to actual? If there are none, I can direct you to page 8, where we talk about our capital program for the district. You see we had, for our budget, we had roughly an $11 million program, but that includes a prospective $6 million bond issue, which we have not come to you yet. We're still assessing values and programs for that. So when we talk about actual year to date, we started the capital budget with roughly 5.1 million from previous proceeds, and we are starting to spend those on projects that we have open and ongoing. The biggest ones, I'll call your attention to Post Oak Lane project of about $1.2 million. We're starting to finish up that project. West Loop improvements has a budget of $400,000. We spent to date about $200,000 with the design on some West Loop improvements as we finish Post Oak Boulevard. I'll point out that we also have in the budget for Villa de Este in the Parks and Trail sections. Primarily that's new projects to spend on new proceeds, but we do have a $250,000 line item budget for the Villa de Este sound wall, which you'll hear more about in this meeting. And then I'll point you on down to signalized intersections, which is where we plan to spend, again, the proceeds that we have existing. We have a $2.5 million capital project for our new intersections and rings, and we're getting into the design, finishing up some design for that. And then again, for sign and shield improvements to the tune of $150,000. So that's where we've been spending some money, and we expect to get those up and going. And then we also have a slew of some new things which would use new proceeds. But roughly, we've only spent just over $500,000 of the $5 million that we have in proceeds.
And we will come back to the board before we go into any of those other projects you talked about.
Correct. Are there questions or concerns regarding our capital program?
First of all, I apologize for, I don't know if you can read, can people actually see the numbers on these screens? On your screen? Kendall, can you see it?
Oh, man, you pick it up. Sure.
Okay, well, you have your glasses on. I appreciate that. We're trying to figure out how to make it a little bit larger, but a
Yeah,
computer.
they're very visible.
Okay, good. All right. We were afraid you couldn't see them that well. Okay. Any questions from Shannon or any of us about the third quarter year to date, both our operating and our capital budget? I think just in quick summary says that we're in line on spending in operations over the year. Revenues, we expect another $500,000 worth of taxable revenue coming in the next really few days from Harris County. Expenditures are about where they should be and are certainly manageable to carry us through the end of the year. In terms of the capital projects, we haven't spent a lot of money, and we have some things we are going to be proposing over the next few months. Yes, sir. Any questions?
Hey, John, were you able to get through the weather in February pretty unscathed now that you've had a chance to look at the trees and just all the work you did on Post Oak? Were you able to?
Yeah. We lost some vacuum breakers. We had irrigation system, some problems, even though we had drained and made precautions. We lost all of our winter flowers, pansies. It was colder than pansies could take. I've never seen mature live oaks get their leaves burnt, but I think we saw that, but we're seeing those coming back. Very much concerned about all of our new live oaks along Post Oak Boulevard. I think they are pushing off their leaves, and we're getting pretty good reports that there's green growth there. So, but we're continuing to watch that. Things like our green fence along Post Oak Boulevard, where we had jasmine growing on a new structure, that was frozen back, and we're having to cut it back near the ground and spend this summer growing that back. Our ficus that we have growing on the walls of the freeway was severely burned, and we're going to have to cut that off and have it grow back this year. We think everything is good at the root level and just lost a lot of the green. For example, roses did okay. Foxtail fern, we had to cut back. It's already coming back. The Asiaticum, which is ground cover, we had to cut back, but is coming back as well. So bottom line is, we just took up our flowers and we'll be planting those in April. But other than that, we didn't lose any physical facilities other than some minor, probably $20,000 worth of irrigation work.
Thank you, John. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, so does that take us on to our next item, which is to discuss the resolution concerning exemption of residents' homestead from taxation? Stephen, do you want to take us through that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Every year at this time, we have to renew our homestead exemption. And the resolution before you on page 9 will continue our past practice of granting a $15,000 homestead exemption to people who are over the age of 65 or who are disabled. And then a blanket 20% homestead exemption for all residents' homesteads in the district.
So do we need to request a motion to approve?
Yes, a motion to approve the resolution concerning exemptions from taxation be in order.
Motion.
Second.
Motion.
So So Moose is moving. Who's the second?
Second is Sunny Messiah Giles.
Thank you so much. So all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. That moves us on to our next item, which is to adopt a resolution providing for additional penalty for tax collection costs. Stephen, if you take us through that, that's page 10.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is the second of our yearly resolutions concerning tax collections. What this one does, in keeping with prior practice and in keeping with the county's practice, is it assesses an additional 20% penalty when taxes become delinquent. And we use the funds received from that penalty to defray the cost of collecting the taxes.
Is there any discussion about this item? If not, do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved, Steve Lerner.
Thank you, Mr. Lerner. Is there a second?
Sunny Messiah Giles, I'll second it.
Thank you, sir, for a great second. Appreciate it. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, motion carried.
You're raising the hand, okay?
It is, if somebody can count it.
Thank you. So that moves us on to our next item, which is to accept a disclosure memorandum of investment officer. Page 11, if you would take us through that, please. Stephen.
John Breeding, in his capacity as investment officer for the district, is required every year to disclose any ownership interest that he has in any firms that are doing business with the district, and he has none of those to declare. So that's what this memorandum states.
Any questions about that? If not, I for a motion to accept memorandum.
Casper, so moved.
You, Mr. Casper?
Second, Gerald.
Thank you, Gerald. All right, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. With that, we go on to the next item, which is to review the district's investment policy and consider approval of any recommended changes, and that's found on page 12. Shannon, if we could ask you to take us through that, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Starting on page 12, actually through page 28 is the investment policy for this year. We are proposing just one change. If you would scroll to page 29, I try and prepare an overview to kind of tell you what is in each of the major sections and any updates, if any, that we are proposing. You can see in terms of broker dealers in section 4.01, we've added Texas Capital Bank, and that is on page 16 of the policy. I kind of highlighted it there for you. And that is the only change that we're proposing this year. There are no other changes. Are there questions or concerns regarding this policy? It is required to review and be approved annually.
So if there's no discussion, I would like to request a motion to approve the policy.
Crickets.
Oh, sorry, who moved?
Casper, so moved.
Thank you.
Sunny Messiah Giles, I'm seconding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so all those in favor?
You don't have to.
Okay, motion carries. And that moves us on to the next item, which is to adopt a resolution for the support of congressionally directed community project funding for Memorial Park shared use path connectors. Page 30.
Yeah, if I could, I'm going to take us through a presentation. This is You can find everything on beginning on page 31. The slideshow will hopefully include all of that as well. First of all, this map is part of the Memorial Park Master Plan. And as you can see, it is how we build pedestrian and jogger and bicycle connection into and through Memorial Park. The Uptown TERS has responsibility the district has a responsibility for much of the improvements in this immediate area. And the TERS has a broader responsibility in the park and serving and connecting the park via these pathways. The problem is that we think that by working together, the management district is a designated recipient of federal funds. Not every district can receive funds, and certainly the TERS cannot. And so by the district working together to receive a grant and the TERS providing local match, we're able to build these projects to the benefit of both groups. And so as of today, if I just go back, these three segments have undergone a federally mandated planning process, and that we have received environmental clearance. These three projects have received, in fact, a Federal Transit Administration letter of no prejudice, which means that we can go forward. These are termed basically shovel ready. The problem is, although they are included in our region's transportation improvement program, their $27 million estimate of cost doesn't have funding at this moment. And it appears that the Congress is willing to consider what they're calling congressionally directed community project funding, or as others might call earmarking within the House. And we want to present these projects for consideration, and it has to be done as probably by May of 2021. And there are no rules at this moment, but we want to be ready. So therefore, on page, if you'll help me out just a moment, on page 33, I believe, 33, 34, there is a resolution on page 35. I finally got there, excuse me. And that resolution basically affirms our commitment to those pathway and trails identified on that map. And you would authorize us to submit the necessary information to request that these projects be considered for congressionally directed community project funding. And so I would be more than happy to attempt to answer your questions, but the bottom line is that we think there's going to be a program. We don't see funding available elsewhere, and we want to submit these for this federally mandated funding. Any questions?
Okay, if there's no questions or discussion, may I request a motion to adopt the resolution for the support of congressionally directed community project funding for Memorial Park shared use path connectors?
This is Gerald, so moved.
Who was
Sonny,
that?
I think Gerald moved.
Gerald moved.
Sonny
Sonny,
seconded.
Thank you, Gerald and Sonny. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That moves us on to the review of bids and consider authorizing staff to award contract for lighting and signal maintenance, multi-year agreement, found on page 37, please.
If I get you to follow me here. Quickly, we have very significant investment in pedestrian lighting throughout the area, as well as work that we have to do and we're responsible on an ongoing basis with our traffic signals. In terms of lighting, we're actually responsible for the lighting on the stations. We're lighting for our pylon pedestrian lighting, and we're responsible for the median lighting as well. In addition to that, certainly we're responsible for doing things like maintaining the pedestrian push buttons. As you see, the one in the upper right corner has been hit by a car. We have proven that if you will put things within public right of way, someone will find the ability to hit it. And so over the years, we pretty frequently have to replace some of these median signal poles. We often have to replace, and then any other work with our signal shields or our overhead illuminated signs. We have some minor repairs that have to be done on a sort of a call out basis. Well, what we need is to have a firm who's knowledgeable and experienced in this area to do that work. We sent out a request for proposals to 8 firms using the City of Houston's contractor list. We held a pre-proposal meeting back in December, and then we were to receive proposals, bids in December, later in December. We had 2 groups that responded, both highly qualified individuals. Both have done work as part of the reconstruction of Post Oak Boulevard. They know our systems, the subsystems. So we were real pleased that both of them were willing to make a proposal. Upon reviewing it, it's our recommendation based on expertise and ability and experience to do this work, but also on a cost of time and materials basis to award this contract to Reliable Signal and Lighting. We have worked with them, and they have done work with us in the past. Very comfortable with this award, and they offered the best financial package as well. We think that on an annual basis that we'll spend somewhere in the range of $100,000 to $150,000 a year. This will be the first time we've done it, but just looking back at previous expenditures, that dollar amount is controlled in our annual budget. We will control the expenditures of this on a work order basis. Basically probably giving ourselves enough funds to do what we fund a quarter's worth of quarter of the year's type maintenance. But it is our recommendation that we award the contract to Reliable Signal and Lighting Solutions for the maintenance of our electrical system for pedestrian lighting and our signals.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just a couple questions of Dr. Breeding. John, if it's a T&M basis, it sounds like you're going to spend as much money as you have budgeted for that item for that year. Is that correct?
I think there's some question, since this is the first year that we'll actually need. We're at $150,000 kind of upper limit. I don't know that we're going to need that much. And so what we have proposed is that the budget itself controls it, and that's about $150,000. But then we will manage it by work order on a, if you will, giving ourselves a lump to work through some of this work. So we will know more at the end of this year about what it's really going to take than we know at this moment.
Look, I'm all for understanding on an exploratory basis what this is. All of us have real estate we're involved in, and all of us get our ears prick up a little bit when someone goes on T&M because that can be an open ticket. So I just want to make sure we have a process where that is managed and people are just aren't running an engine without a governor on it. That's all.
It's very much, here is a, if you will, a push button that's been hit by a car. We have a long history of knowing what it has cost us in the past, and we'll authorize that action to be taken. It won't be just a contractor out there doing what the contractor wants. It's individual increments of the if you will, maintenance is, those decisions are made on a weekly, daily basis. So I think it's very
Thank
much
you.
in hand. Thank you.
And for the sake of clarity, TNM is what?
T&M, which is time and materials basis.
Oh, I'm sorry, misunderstood. Okay. Any other discussion on that item?
John, who handled this before previously? I mean, I know we've added a lot of improvements to the district and over the last couple of years, but did we handle this in-house or was there another firm handling it?
First of all, this is really focused on Post Oak Boulevard. And we handled it through, that was much a part of the capital project, building the project. For example, we've had pedestrian lighting on all the other streets for some time. We have a contract with a firm that we can call out and have them go make repairs on an as needed basis. And so this is basically getting Post Oak Boulevard up to that kind of functioning level and getting it beyond the construction project into an operating level.
Any other discussion on that item? If not, could I ask for a motion authorizing staff to award the contract for a multi-year lighting and signal maintenance contract not to exceed $150,000 in 2021?
Steve Lerner, so moved.
Is there a second?
Sonny Messiah Giles coming in for a second.
No, you're gonna make the high film. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries, and that takes us on to our next item, John, found on page 38, which is the board authorization to award contract for Uptown 610 sound wall improvements. And where is that?
In fact, I have a map here. I'll show you in just a moment. Basically, we're looking at from Uptown Park Boulevard to Buffalo Bio on the west side of the West Loop. To put this in context, with the construction of the busway all the way from I-10 down to Post Oak Boulevard and the reconstruction down at Richmond and other construction activities, almost every area along the West Loop in this section has been destroyed, damaged, and it goes back several years ago when we worked with TxDOT to get we call it a greening, a landscaping of the West Loop corridor. And so after all of this has happened, all this construction has happened, it is now time to go back and to make those repairs and plant along the boulevard. We've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. We found that it's easier to mow and take care of an area than it is necessarily to let it be forested and overgrown. Once we get an overgrown area, we tend to get residents move in there. And I'm speaking of human residents that move into this area. And so it has been our, I guess, educated approach to this is to keep the corridor visible, open, and not provide a lot of secure places for people to take up residence. So we worked with TxDOT. And we have done this as a team with TxDOT, and using this as an example, what should we do to enhance this after all the construction activities are done? So you take something like this, you develop plans that both TxDOT likes and that we can afford to maintain. You select some plant materials, and what we're proposing is something as you're seeing here, using both turf, using some small shrubs, using various things to create some interest, but things that we can maintain and that don't provide a hiding place for others. If we look up and down the corridor, I'm showing you just some random photographs or sketches here, what will actually happen. The good news is that about $1.8 million worth of landscaping is going to be provided totally by the Texas Department of Transportation. But it is a joint project. This $1.8 million worth of landscaping will be bid in July. We expect construction to begin in September and to be completed by next June. And so sort of bring the freeway corridor back up to much nicer level than it is at the moment. This shared responsibility has been broken out between TxDOT, who's going to carry the bulk of the cost of this project, but Uptown took over the responsibility for doing the design for this bid package. And we are responsible for the section between Uptown Park Boulevard and the Buffalo Bayou. And that's kind of, I use this to put this in context. And so to give you a visual image of this, basically from about where you can see the yellow sign would be Buffalo Bayou up to Uptown Park's approximately 600 feet. This is a big part of our future pedestrian connections from Uptown into Memorial Park. And so this is the only place in Houston where we do have a sound wall, but we have tried to come in here and develop a plan that would be appealing to not only us to be able to maintain it, the folks with property along in this area, as well as TxDOT. So we have a plan that has the wall, it has enhancements to the wall, it has a gate there, and then landscaping in front with irrigation. So there's some repair to some fence that had been there before TxDOT came in and constructed. Basically, again, as kind of a cooperative joint effort, there were some things that TxDOT needed help in doing, and we asked the board to approve our part of the activity. I'll show you here just a moment. Our first bid that we got, Mike, was $360-some thousand. We said that's way too high. We went back in and did value engineering on some of the fencing materials. The irrigation was more than we do anywhere else. We do think we need to irrigate the ground cover and the trees like we would, like we do anywhere in the Westwood Corridor when we plant something. Bottom line is agreed upon a price of $265,000, which our budgeted dollar amount was $250,000. And we think we can do this project in a way which we'll all appreciate it, but within our financial constraints. Landscape Art Inc. Had winning bid, and we recommend the award of a $265,000 contract to Landscape Art. Any questions?
John, is that strategy have sprinklers involved, or is the irrigation more subtle than that?
The irrigation is much more subtle than that. In fact, that's the kind of thing we pulled out what we'll have is that we will have bubblers for the trees, and then we will have drip irrigation for the plants that will be growing on the wall. And that basically we don't have sprinklers in the freeway rights of way. You have a little on Uptown Park. Yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions or discussion? If not, may I request a motion to authorize staff to award a contract for construction of the Uptown 610 Sound Wall Improvement Project?
Casper, so moved.
Thank you.
Second from Sunny Messiah Jones.
Thank you very much. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And that takes us to our last item, which is to receive an update on projects. John or Andrew?
Okay, well, I'm going to give this over to Andrew and let him give you an update on the incredible progress that we're making.
Thank you, sir. This is Andrew Jared. This is our goal, as you see, 2022, October. So far, so good. Next slide. Tunnel progress. We've had excellent progress in the tunnels. As a matter of fact, we set our last tunnel main arch last Friday. So you've got 420 feet of arches and tunnels on the west side close to you and on what we're calling the west mound. And you've got 264 feet in the background of what we're calling the east mound. You'll see the mounding coming up on the right side, or which is the south side of the screen. These tunnels will be covered with structural fill, gravel, waterproofing by the mid to late summer of this year. There's a good picture of the waterproofing going up. That's a bentonite material. There'll be gravel, structural fill, water, French drains, etc. in that area. You can see the electrical room egress in the middle, and that allows the fire protection and folks to jump back and forth during an emergency. The SLT project or progress, I'm sorry. We're working on the north side. We're about 50% complete on the SLT in this region. It's a decomposed granite.
Andrew, what is the SLT?
Seaboard Lieberman Trail.
It's a jogging trail around in Memorial.
It is going to be a 3-mile trail completed, going completely around the golf course, basically. Go ahead. Memorial Drive progress. So we started on the east side and we're building the road east to west, both new Memorial Drive pieces in here. There's a nice picture going into the tunnels on the east side. And then the Southern Trail progress, we'll have a Southern Trail going around the entire perimeter on the south side. We'll use it as a detour for the next 8 months. Go ahead. There's a quick look at it, a much easier decomposed granite trail. And then we've got the East Commuter Trail on the east side, of course, and it's a all-weather trail, which will be concrete. There's a nice shot of it.
Andrew, how are your construction team? How is that team working out?
Construction team's been working excellent. We've come up on this next slide with the Prairie. We've come up with a way to utilize sand on the Prairie or in the Prairie to actually use it on site as structural fill. So we'll have a cut and balance of basically zero at this point of 550,000 cubic yards. So in this, you can see the Prairie being dug. It's about a 10-foot deep element, and you'll see a sand seam at the bottom. That is what we're using for structural fill and compaction. Very nice win-win-win for everybody.
Andrew, what is we see back over by the tunnels? what is the pile there represent?
That's starting the west mound on your left and the east mound on your right. So we're about 20% complete on mounding.
Will that be pushed forward, or is that kind of geographically where it will start going up?
Geographically, it'll start what we're calling our the west picnic loop.
Yeah.
So the mounds actually start right at picnic loop and then dive into the prairie.
Which is where that fence goes through there? Is that the picnic loop?
Right there, yes.
Okay. All right. The interesting thing I think is we drive down and you look at these and you think maybe it's an airplane hangar or something like that. And how striking they are. I can't wait till we see those things covered in dirt.
So you'll have about a 40 to 50 foot differential from the bottom of the prairie to the top of the mounds. Depending on what area. Project budget, we're showing right on project or maybe slightly under completion. We're showing a completion date of September 15th, which is about 6 weeks ahead. NWDBE goal of 20%, we're going to exceed by quite a bit we should end up around 33.43%. That's the contracts that currently. And the big thing, we completed the main arches last Friday on this schedule. The new SLT will open in June. Head walls in July. So we'll have 50 feet of head walls on each side of these tunnels as we go forward. And then the eastbound, westbound switch, you'll have the eastbound first going through the tunnels, which will allow you to build out the rest of the westbound. So that's why you have a month differential there.
Andrew, did you say the commuter trail was open?
Commuter trail is open, but it's the detour, so you'll have to go down the railroad track and catch it about halfway down.
I was trying to light it up, but it's over here on the left.
There it is.
But it is open?
Yes, sir.
Great.
So I have a question. Knowing all of this is being built out, what happens in the rodeo piece when it comes back? Does it still come through this area and reside, or what happens?
Yes, ma'am. It still comes through, and I think they're working that out, but I believe they are going to go through the tunnel.
Historically, though, they've camped out in this area. Will they still be able to do that?
They're still.
That's what I was curious about.
Signal wise, I'm pretty confident to paint a ridiculous example. But let's say we actually.
Somebody needs to mute. We'll find out who.
All right.
The rodeo is still camped here. The MP Memorial Park and Service is still working out the logistics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we have, I think that is all we have. And I just have to go back and say that this is a project, obviously, that the Uptown Development Authority, Memorial Park Conservancy, and the Kinder Foundation are doing. Your management district employees, Andrew and others, are working on this project. It is these arches, the tunnels themselves, very interesting process. That is a minority business enterprise that has been highly successful, and we fought for them to get the work, and they've done a great job. And he's got a great team of people that are moving the earth around. We got Ray Tech, who built much of Post Oak Boulevard, is doing much of the utility and road work. So it's a team with Tellefson managing, doing the construction management. And I think we have to report a very successful management of the project. And it goes all the way from the guys who are working out there in the mud to the people who are getting the bills paid. So it's worked out very well so far.
I want to compliment the fact that you're coming in early, but also the MWBE goal, considering all the disparity studies that have been horrible, to have this say 33%, I applaud your accomplishment.
Thank you very much. We've worked very intentionally to make that happen. All right, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing else, and we appreciate everything. I would like to have some feedback about what you liked about doing the Zoom meeting like this, what you hated, what we need to change, and shoot me an email, text, or give me a call. Anyone else?
Okay, great. With that, I guess we adjourn HCID meeting number 1 meeting. And thank y'all for attending. And Sonny, thank you for all your good seconds.